Blog Talk Radio.
The funeral is about to begin, sir.
The calling hours.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here. They will say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding? Kill all thy death. Thy love.
And welcome to another episode of the Calling Hours Horror Podcast on Horror Society Radio. This is your host, the Dead Man, Michael Jones. And once again, we are going to be bringing you some premium entertainment only on Horror Society Radio. Tonight, we have a bevy of great things going on. Our featured guests this evening are two people that I've been wanting to have on the show for a while. I've done interviews with them. They've been in magazine articles that I've written about. You know, we're going to have Paul J. Porter and Hayley Derryberry of Rabid Love on. Jessica Sonnenborn may be joining us. She is currently on set, but she has messaged me to let me know that if she can make it, she will be calling in to talk about the film, and all three of them will be talking about Rabid Love. One of our DVD reviews this evening in digital dismemberment will be the Rabid Love movie. The other Blu-ray DVD review at the end of the show will be Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of The Beast of Hollow Mountain. So those of you that are fans of older creature feature-styled horror films will really enjoy that. In our Indie Spotlight this evening, we are going to have Aaron Darley on. Aaron is going to be on to talk about the Killer Pizza Kickstarter campaign. One of our writers, Mac, good old Mac, over at Horror Society, kind of filled everyone in on this film, and I think the concept looks interesting. Their little video describing the film is going to be pretty cool. So Aaron should be joining us in about 10 minutes or so to talk about the film. So we are really looking forward to that. In our Metal Blade Spotlight this evening, we are going to be hearing songs from Aeon, Amon Amarth, and Hail of Bullets. So it is quite the jam-packed show. So before Aaron comes on to talk about Killer Pizza, let's go ahead and set up our DVD review for our guests at the 8:30 hour. Let's get into some digital dismemberment.
Digital dismemberment.
Well, tonight, since our guests are going to be Paul J. Porter and Hayley Derryberry, I figured it was the appropriate time to go ahead and review Rabid Love, the movie. And let me just go ahead and give you the brief synopsis really quick. A group of recent college grads on a final camping trip together pursue their own agendas when it comes to relationships, but must put aside their differences and try to survive when one of them disappears and something in the forest starts killing the rest. The movie, of course, is Rabid Love. It's been released by Midnight Releasing. It's from our friends at Rogue Taurus Films. And, I have to say that I'm highly, highly impressed by this film. A lot of the press releases and the information that I got about the film were that it was, imitation is not the right word, but a loving reconstruction of 1980s-styled horror films. And, in the industry, we hear that a lot. Oh, this is a throwback to Friday the 13th. This is a throwback to the 80s, to the 70s, whatever. But, I have to be honest. I found myself most of the time watching the movie sitting there thinking about how incredible it was, knowing that the film was shot on Canon digital cameras, that they managed to get almost that same grain and quality look of an 80s horror film. I mean, they actually delivered on what they said they were going to deliver. And it's the movie itself. I mean, the story is absolutely perfect as well. Paul did a lot of the writing for it. I believe he wrote the entire film, if I am not mistaken. And he acts and stars in the film as well. Of course, Hayley, who is his wife, is in the film. There's just a great cast of people. Of course, I mentioned Jessica Sonnenborn, Ali Lofquist. I mean, it's Josh Hammond. The whole cast and crew, definitely seemed to know what they were doing. It's hard to quantify. It was such a great movie that I really felt like I was watching something from the 80s. And one of the things that was nice on the DVD, a couple things that were nice. Jessica had her own video log blog that she put on in, and I believe there were 6 or 7 episodes, and it was just little 3, 4, maybe 5-minute segments, and you just got a quick glimpse at what they were doing. And one of the things that really came across while she filmed those was how much fun and excitement she was having and the cast and crew were having. It's funny, being an effects artist myself. It was funny to sit there and watch the joy on Hayley's face when she talked about how she was making her blood, using pancake syrup instead of Caro syrup, and just all the ingredients that she put in. But there was just so much joy behind it. And when they come on later, I'm certainly going to ask them about more of the series behind the scenes stuff and things like that. The other thing that I liked were some of the outtakes. Some of them were very humorous. Again, very good natured, and it showed again how much they enjoyed working together, how much fun they had. Now, one of the things that you'll think of when you watch this movie, spoiler alert, Rabid Love, rabies, the whole concept of how the character catches rabies and everything that happens, and we'll go into more detail on that when they come on for the interview. But the whole concept of it being a super strain of rabies, a lot of people will get the initial impression this is a rip-off of Rabid or I Drink Your Blood or something like that, and it's not. I mean, you can see the elements from that 80s style, but again, I think that's part of what's unique about the film is how through his writing and through all of their acting, how the characters are able to, like I said, make you feel like you're in an 80s film. There is some blood and gore, most definitely, but there's not an abuse or overuse of it. Again, would fit in well with the 80s style of horror film. Nothing too outrageous. The practicality of the effects were nice. I didn't catch too much in the way of any CGI or anything like that. I mean, everything was well blended. The locations were fantastic. I mean, you really felt like you were isolated watching the film where they were. And again, the performances are spot on. You can go back to movies like Sleepaway Camp, Friday the 13th, Happy Birthday to Me, and you look at the style of acting, and all of the actors and actresses managed to bring that into their performance. The film has won a lot of awards. It's available through on demand, several different formats and varieties, through retailers. They have it available on the Rabid Love website. You can go to. I'm sure you could go to Rogue Tourist as well, Midnight Releasing's page, and be able to procure the film. Overall, I have to say, I was very, very impressed. The movie itself is definitely, an 8 or 9 out of 10. It's, I can't wait to go back and watch it again just to pick up on the things that I may have missed. And when I have the written review up in the next couple of days over on Horror Society, I'll give it a final grade. The other thing that was nice about it, too, were the special features that were included. Again, I like the idea of Hayley doing the video blog, and it can be hectic on set, I know this, but to take the time and, to, like I said, to see a lot of the joy that was on her face while she was filming it, her interactions with the other cast and crew, the props, the locations, just, everything that she showed. And again, what you saw in the outtakes was really nice. Some of the slates were really funny as well. The one guy naming off all the different horror movies and horror characters. Overall, again, like I said, somewhere between an 8 and a 9. I would highly, highly recommend going out and getting it. This is the prime example of what somebody can do who loves independent horror, loves old horror, and can use the new technology to their advantage to recreate what they loved. So if you're a fan of old horror films, if you like indie films, this is definitely a film to check out, but you really won't get that indie vibe from this film. Back in the 80s, I think this would definitely have played in the theater. I still think today this could play in the theater. It certainly has a lot more entertainment value and quality than what Hollywood's been jamming down our throat in the recent years. So definitely check this out. We'll get into more of the details of the movie and the plot line when I have Hayley and Paul on. I don't want to give away too much straight out the gate, so I'm really looking forward to that. Coming up here in a moment, we should be having Erin Darley on. She is going to come on and tell us about the Killer Pizza Kickstarter campaign. So I'm really looking forward to that. This looks good. Yeah, she's messaging me right now. But I liked what I saw from the Killer Pizza Kickstarter page. Ron Jeremy's involved with the project. So I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit about that, how it all came to be. I remember I tried to interview Ron several years ago, and his agent gave me an outrageous price for an interview. So, but I'm really interested in hearing the project. Aliens, pizza, things like that. So, and it looks like I have Erin now. Thank you for calling Horror Society Radio. This is the Dead Man. Is this Erin?
Uh-huh. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Well, look, like I was saying to everybody, Mac, one of our writers on Horror Society, Mac had kind of tipped me into this film, and I read his article, and I found it interesting. I went over and checked out your guys' Kickstarter campaign, and the first thing that jumps out at you, of course, is Ron Jeremy. Before we even get into Ron Jeremy, tell us a little bit about how the concept of Killer Pizza came to be.
Well, it's been a long time coming. The concept started a couple years ago. It started as kind of a joke, as some good movies do.
Right.
And sorry, 1 second. Sorry.
It's okay.
Anyway, it started as a joke, and then we started to realize that we talked about Killer Pizza a lot, and because it was an on-set thing on a different movie a couple years ago. And then we were talking about it so much, we were like, we should just make a screenplay. And we did it, knowing that we were going to approach Ron Jeremy and write one of the parts for him. and here we are.
All right. Well, now comes the next logical question. You know, why did you seek out Ron Jeremy? Of course, I can think of a million different jokes thinking of Ron Jeremy and cross-referencing pizza and porn, but I mean, what was the actual decision to say, you know what, damn it, we want Ron Jeremy in it? And once you got to talk to Ron, I mean, how excited was he about is he about the project?
He really killed it on set when he helped us with our Kickstarter video. We had a couple of friends, Tristan, our DP, and our friend Janice, and they shot everything for the Kickstarter out in L.A. And Kai and I were kind of directing via phone from Kansas, and Ron, we were just so jealous, like all day. We were exchanging like the dirtiest, funniest jokes, like back and forth. Like Ron made our script girl on set super shy because he's got a filthy, dirty sense of humor, and it was awesome. And I was so jealous. He showed up on set, and there's so many deleted scenes from the Kickstarter video of stuff that he just made up, and we really, really, really are endlessly thankful to him for just really blowing his part out the goddamn airlock.
I mean, he really did. He really did.
Thank you. Yeah, we're happy with it.
Now, I wanted to ask you about that. You know, of course, you said you directed his segments from over the phone, but I think the segments with you and Kai, and you want to tell everyone who Kai is?
Oh, yeah. Kai is my best friend, and he and I have been making movies for a long time. He's a longtime filmmaker here in Lawrence, Kansas, and he will be directing Killer Pizza.
I really think that your guys' segments, really helped sell the whole Kickstarter video as well. You know, was kind of your inspiration from that, kind of like watching the old or the bad infomercials, like the slap chop and stuff like that? Because in a way, that's how you guys came across. Was that intentional?
Yes, thank you. Very intentional. It's kind of funny. There's a lot of there's some strange transmissions in the Killer Pizza script as well, and so the public access kind of feel. Was inspired by a couple of things. It is in the feature-length film. There are a couple of creepy, weird scenes that involve like sort of an old-timey like public access kind of feel. And then we're really inspired by just the humor that sort of naturally comes out of those things. So yeah, right on the head there. That's what we were going for.
I'll tell you, one of the things I noticed too, that you talked about kind of like the brakes and the transmission and things like that. The first movie that popped into my mind was Terror Vision. Do you remember that film?
Kai probably brings that movie up every day. I can't not remember that film. Kai really likes Terror Vision. The breaks in it were pretty inspired by, like I said, like a number of things, and that would definitely be one for sure.
Yeah, I saw that, and I all in my mind I'm screaming, "Oh man, Terror Vision, that's good stuff." Now,
thanks for picking up on that stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I grew up on that stuff, so it's nice. We're having Hayley Derryberry and Paul J. Porter on for their film Rabid Love, and it's definitely a throwback to the 80s. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted you to come on and talk about it, because I got that same vibe from Killer Pizza. Now, what else can you tell us about the cast? Of course, we know we have Ron Jeremy, but who else is involved? And how much of what can you tell us about the story that won't give it away?
Oh, okay. Well, Ron Jeremy, obviously he's going to be playing the part of the shop owner, and he will be very monstrous in the film. And Lori, our friend Lori, who pops up in the Kickstarter video, she's kind of our screen queen. She's been in a couple of our films. Lovely, lovely lady, leg breaking machine. She's a great actress here in Kansas, sort of the darling of many movies here, and definitely excellent at screaming, really good at it. Her scream is actually in the Kickstarter video. It was pretty hilarious. We we on our, this is a side note, on our like our data, like our Scratch folder in the computer, we just like very prominently sitting out front is the sound file called Lori Scream, just because we love it, and it's such a good scream, and it just sits there, and we were happy to use it. And then we're still casting for many of the parts. We're really, really excited. It's a great, because we know a lot of talent. We've got a lot of talent here in Kansas, and we're really excited to move forward. A couple of guys interested in the part of Jimmy. So casting is pretty, as it stands, it's pretty much Lori and Ron for sure, and then we're still excited to move forward with the other parts. It's a small cast.
Right.
There's only, I think, like 6 characters total. It's a little movie, so.
Now, what can you tell us about the plot line without giving away too much?
Yeah, plot line. I don't want to give away too much.
Sure.
Basically, it's a couple kids who graduated from college. They're desperate for jobs, and they find them in this pizza shop that literally just appears overnight, and which is kind of funny because we've had a couple of restaurants pop up in Lawrence like overnight. It's just like, kind of overnight, and people are always like, it pops up overnight, and it's sort of a funny play on of that phenomenon. But anyway, it's really creepy and weird, this pizza shop where they work, and it's obviously not trustworthy at all, and everyone still trusts it, and everyone in town gets pizza that night, whether they want it or not. So I think is that a good nutshell?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I want you to promote it, the way that you want it promoted so that it works out for you. Now, are we looking for, of course, watching the Kickstarter video, are we looking more towards comedy? Because I'll tell you, the other 2 things that hit me were, it seemed like there were alien references, which immediately brought me to Bad Taste and Food, if you remember Peter Jackson's Bad Taste. And I got a very trauma feeling from it as well, and I don't hope you don't take that as a compliment, because trauma I think makes a lot of innovative stuff as well. Is that the vein that you guys are kind of shooting in?
Yeah, we've got one of the co-stars from Toxic Avenger 4. Let's see. It's good. It's a combination. That's kind of where our hearts have always been, is in the campy. But we are hoping to make something that has a tone that is a lot more foreboding and dark, and is not campy. We want the effect to go off in not a B grade level. We want them to be really top notch and very entertaining. And we love campy. It's definitely where we've made a Chicks and Chains movie once. Like we love it, but we're trying to take the tone to a very serious level, a lot more dark and scary, as opposed to something that you go in and you're just laughing because it's silly and cheesy, no pun intended. But no, it's not cheesy. We really hope to make something, but it does have the dark humor. I suppose you could say it's dark humor, not campy humor.
Gotcha. Well, do you want to give everyone where they can go, the website, Kickstarter, Facebook, anything like that?
I would love to.
Please.
The Kickstarter, it's not anything like Kickstarter.com/killerpizza, but if you hop on Kickstarter.com and just Google search it, search it within the Kickstarter, it's just Killer Pizza. Donations, very, very much appreciated. We've got some cool prizes for everybody, and we hope that we can show it to the world. We can show Killer Pizza to the world, and that people can dig it. We know we already dig it. We love our movie, and we want to watch it. That's one of the main reasons we make movies, is we really, really want to watch it, but we're also hoping that other people would like to as well.
Well, I dig that end of it. Well, definitely keep us updated. Drop Mac a line, drop me a line if you have any more news about it, casting news, anything that's going to happen. Thank you, Aaron, so much for coming on, and everyone needs to keep an eye out for Killer Pizza.
Thank you. Very flattered, and I just wanted to say very grateful, and I haven't stopped smiling this entire interview. So thank you very much, Deadman.
Well, thank you very much, and you're always welcome here on the show, so feel free to give us a call anytime.
Cool. All right, I will. We'll keep in touch.
I will do.
Right.
And once again, that was Erin Darley from Killer Pizza. In about 5 minutes, we are going to have Hayley Derryberry, Paul J. Porter, and possibly Jessica Sonnenborn to come on and speak about Rabid Love. But now, in our first Metal Blade Spotlight, we are going to be hearing the band Aeon off of the album Aeon's Black. The name of the song is Nothing Left to Destroy. Aeon off of the album Aeon's Black. The name of the song was Nothing Left to Destroy. Welcome back to Horror Society Radio. This is the Calling Hours Horror Podcast. And once again, I am the dead man, Michael Jones, welcoming our guests, Paul J. Porter and Hayley Derryberry of Rabid Love.
Hi.
What's up, guys? Good. Jessica had messaged me earlier. She said that she would be on set. If she could make it in, she would be calling in. So if Jessica calls in, we will add Jessica to the mix.
Awesome. Yeah, we talked to her earlier.
Oh, sweet. Well, guys, first of all, let me say congratulations on all the success that you've had with Rabid Love. You guys sent me the copy of the film. I got to watch it, and personally, I thought it was brilliant, just everything that you guys did with it. But before we get into Rabid Love straight off, kind of tell us about how both of you got involved with filmmaking and how you met.
Oh, geez. Big question. Let me see. I guess we could start in New Mexico about 2008, winter of. Is that right? Yeah. We both had just gotten into film there and then into the film community, working on little short films and stuff here and there. And I'll let Hayley tell you the rest because that's a big story.
I got into film also in New Mexico. I grew up acting in Tennessee and then moved out to New Mexico about that time. And Paul and I met at a rap party for a project for the History Channel that I had worked on, and Paul just had friends who had worked on it. And, we met and started dating and working together pretty much immediately.
Now, I've had several couples on that are married and work in film together. I've had Matt Farnsworth and Diane Foster. I've had Tyler Main and Renee Geerlings, and I always ask, couples that work together like that, especially in film, do you find that to be more of a challenging aspect, being married and working on the film, or do you think that that's something that helps you when you're together on set?
It's kind of like we never get to clock out. We're always working, which can be a good thing, and sometimes it can be a bad thing, but usually it's a good thing, and that you always have at your disposal the person who you need to get things done. For me anyway, if I have a question, I have an immediate response. If I have an idea, I have an immediate collaborator. So I think the good outweighs the bad.
There's no bad at all.
Really, at first it was awkward, but now it's just the way we work.
Well, and also for us, we collaborate pretty much from the very beginning of any project that we're working on because we're both writing and producing the thing. So, we have two people that are tuned into the project exactly and know all the things that are going on. So for me as a director and her as an actress, we're already in each other's head, so that makes things a lot quicker on set.
Sure. Now let me ask you this, because earlier in my life, I was in the Army for a while, and you were in the Marine Corps for a number of years, and I was just curious on a personal level, what led you going from the Marine Corps and to deciding to work on film?
Well, I'd always kind of been interested in the artsy side of things. When I was a kid, I drew a lot, read comic books, of course, loved movies and cartoons and all that stuff. The Marine Corps was kind of just a way to not go to school anymore after high school because I was tired of going to school. And,
right.
That allowed me to get out of my hometown and kind of travel the world and, get some new experience. So all of my creative pursuits kind of went on hold for a while. And then, I had the opportunity to go to college and get my undergrad degree while I was on active duty. And that's when I kind of started to get back into the art stuff. I went through like 8 majors, started in like drawing and got into media arts, which led to editing, which led to the film program, which is what I graduated from. So that's how I got into it, and that was in New Mexico. And then, of course, there was a lot of stuff going on there, so I got into the film community.
I mean, I just find that fascinating that, you know, that was your passion after, what was it? It was 11 years in the Marine Corps, was it not?
13, actually.
13, wow. I mean, I'm glad to see that you followed through with that and pursued an education in it, and, of course, the end result is Rabid Love. Now, this is a question for both of you, since you guys had brought it up, working together on projects. You know, you guys have done, you know, you did a lot of shorts before that. You've done, you know, acting in a lot of things. But how is it together, you know, both being producers, working on, you know, on the script, just all of the everyday things that go not into only being filmmakers, but also being married at the same time? You know, how did you guys manage to get that divide so that you kept yourself sane while you were around each other?
Geez, I don't know that there really is much of a divide. It's kind of like 24/7 for everything, I guess. You know, we separate the writing. We're not both sitting there trying to type up a script. It's like usually one of us will be more on the story side, and then one of us will be more kind of physically typing the scripts. I don't know, Hayley?
Yeah, I think we tried to divide it at first, and it just wasn't possible. It's you can't really separate that part of yourself, and so now it's just become so normal that it's just what we do. It's part of our relationship as much as our relationship is a part of our professional life. So
sure.
I don't know, it's just the way things are.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to go heavy into Rabid Love here for a while because there are just so many great points to hit upon with this film. The first one is the concept. I mean, I know you guys get asked that in every interview, but, you know, I grew up, well, we both are, you know, we're pretty close in age. We grew up in the same time. We loved 80s horror films. But, you know, where did the concept for Rabid Love really come from, you know, developing it from the short that you guys made and, you know, going from a short to a feature length with it, you know, were you surprised about how much more you had to flesh out the story to give it a completeness?
No, I think I had a pretty good idea of what I was getting into, trying to expand it to a feature. But we had quite a bit of time to do that. And, you know, the short really laid the groundwork. So we had the basic concept of the story and the structure and everything right there. And it was actually really fun to expand that into a feature because, you know, we got to come up with some new characters and really expand on the characters that were in the short, you know, to flesh them out for the feature. So that was actually really fun. The concept itself, I just somehow got this image in my head one day of, I won't give a spoiler alert, but one of the later images in the movie towards the end, and that's between John and Heather, and that just kind of spawns me to start thinking about, you know, how did these two people end up like this? And then, you know, the inspiration was always going to be horror movies from the late 70s, early 80s. So we started watching tons of those. We have a list of like 50 movies that we watched for the sole purpose of researching, you know, stories like this and movies that have been made that were similar so that we could be informed when we wrote our story. So a lot of things came out of that.
How about for you, Hayley?
Well, for me, it was originally Paul's concept. So he wrote the short completely by himself, I think. I might have had a couple things here or there that I mentioned or suggested. But it wasn't really until we started expanding it to the features that I came in with the ideas. And, yeah, I mean, it was fun. We got to create a world. We mapped everything out. We actually drew a map of what was happening, where everything was, where the cabin was, where the lair was, where the lake was. So it was kind of cool. It was like getting to build this whole world and then creating characters from nothing and moving them around. It's like, like playing with dolls as a kid. You get to create an entire fantasy world. It was really cool.
Well, and you brought up, drawing the map and the locations, and we'll certainly get to the production end of it. But, one of the things that really struck me that made this film feel genuine was the character interaction. And in particular, like for you, Hayley, your character of Heather and Jessica's character of Julie, I mean, you almost felt like there was that sisterly bond between the two of them. To give people an idea, have you worked with Jessica extensively in the past? And if not, how did you guys come about to having that you're my brother's fiance, you're going to be my future sister-in-law type relationship?
Well, no, I hadn't worked with Jess in the past. I had worked on set with her and knew her a little bit, not acting, but we had both been stand-ins on a project together on a TV show. So that was really all I knew her from. I don't know that we really did much other than, drawing from the characters. I mean, when we wrote the character, we didn't know who was going to play it, and she just always had this tomboy kind of feel. She was almost like the female embodiment of John. She's John's sister, so the two of them are very similar. And then, since Heather's in love with John, it just makes sense that she gets along so well with Julie. I always get Julie and Jessica mixed up because their names are so similar.
But like I said, the acting just comes across as so genuine. Anyone watching the film would certainly believe that you two were almost the best of friends of the whole time. And that's a credit, I think, to both of your acting abilities that, that emotional but, portrayal came across really well. And the same thing with your character, Paul. Your character of John and the character of Adam, played by Josh Hammond, the way you two kind of foiled off of one another, it was extremely believable that the two of you were best friends since, what was it, middle school, I think is what it said in the movie. How long had you known Josh, and how did that work out between you guys, that you were able to convey that type of emotion that well?
That's all Josh. I'm not an actor at all. I just did it out of necessity. My method as an actor is to just basically play myself. I'm not a character guy. I can't do anything. My acting is so weak. So I thank all of my fellow cast members for, making me not look like an idiot. But yeah, Josh, he played the same character in the short, so we had known him, just from those few days. And his character of Adam was actually based on, loosely, on a childhood friend of mine that I grew up with. So, I was kind of used to that type of person, I guess. But Josh and Jessica, too, all of our actors, but specifically those two, they just came in and hit it out of the park. Because they're both total pros and they really have it together. So for me as a director, with our entire cast, it was just a breeze, I think. So as a first-time director, I couldn't have asked for anything better because they really, helped me out, and I feel like they made me look good.
Like I said, that's the first thing that really stood out to me was the core group of characters. A lot of times, a lot of people like to joke about 80s horror films and the characters are just all trash and, we want to see them die. I really got the feeling that, these are all people that are really good friends, that all love one another, and shit just goes wrong and it turns into a bloodbath. Mm-hmm. Now, let me ask you this. I was reading through the Rabid Love behind the scenes of the motion picture book that you guys had sent me, and
cool.
You had talked about one of the other characters. I certainly want to mention the other character of Summer that Hannah Landberg played. you had talked about in this book about there being other characters and spreading character traits over to other characters, and at one point, one of the characters, and I believe it was the character played by Brandon when he played David or Blake, you spread out character traits, and then you made Brandon if you want to call him the bad guy of the film. What would, was it always the intention to have, kind of the third girl, the fifth wheel, to kind of be the plot twist, or were you actually looking to have more characters initially in the group?
Yeah, Brandon's. Sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say no. Initially, we had 3 couples,
right, and
there wasn't a fifth wheel. But I think it worked out better in the end, the way it worked out.
Certainly.
Because initially, Brandon's character, Julie and Brandon weren't a couple; they were just tag-along for the how we had originally written it. So I guess it was 2 couples and 2 tag-alongs.
Right.
Had kind of a flirtatious thing between the 2 of them. But then, so when his character moved over to being the photographer, then we kept that little flirtatious thing going on between them, and it worked out so well, especially with Brandon and Jess, because they had worked together and knew each other, and so it was just hilarious to see them interacting, and they really knew how to crack each other up. And we have some stuff on the bloopers too that you can see with that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Paul.
yeah, and Brandon's character, the one that he ended up being in the movie was actually originally 2 characters. So there was that one extra guy in the cabin that was going to be part of the group, and then the kind of outdoors photographer guy that was originally going to be played by our friend Colin Cunningham, but he was up north in Vancouver shooting Falling Skies and couldn't make it down. So we had to kind of scramble, I don't know, a month or 2 out from production and rewrite the script to adapt for that. So we just basically took those 2 characters together and gave them both to Brandon. And yeah, it ended up being really fun. But back to the interaction of the group, another thing is, Brandon, Jessica, Josh, and Hannah, they were all, well, I guess Brandon, he actually brought all of them onto the project and introduced us to all 3 of them initially. So, they had kind of already relationships put in place, so they were already friendly. Hayley and I were the outsiders stepping into that whole thing.
Huh. Now, staying on Brandon for a second in particular, one of the things that's always, of course, iconic about 80s horror films is, you have a unique individual who's doing whatever evil they are doing, own kill style, own weapon, and things like that. And Rabid Love and Brandon's performance in it certainly brings that. He's not your typical, masked maniac or anything like that, but his murder weapon's unique, and his reason behind it is unique. At what point with his character did you decide, I don't know how to describe it. I don't want to say autistic or anything like that, but he certainly has the certain tics. When you did your research into the rabies aspect of the film, how much did you guide him as a director for his physical acting?
None at all, really, for the physical stuff. I mean, that's all him. I'm thrilled with what he came up with. We had the backstories for each of our characters, which I think goes into the writing a lot, and the interaction with them, because we had a whole history with this group of people of, their whole life experience up to the point of the movie that they knew about. So that was something for them to go off of. And then for Brandon's character, his history goes back to working for the Department of Defense and, interacting with Ronald Reagan and on this weapons program and all kinds of stuff. And then, the little story that he tells about how he got rabies when he was a kid. So Brandon he took all that information and came up with this awesome physicality with the character and, the tantrums and all of that stuff. And so, yeah, I was really, really happy with that stuff.
Yeah, it was interesting to Paul researched the history of rabies and what happened. Like, okay, so this is set in the 80s, so then David would have been a kid around, in the 60s? So Paul had researched what it was like for someone when they got infected with rabies in the 60s, and it was very painful, and you had to go through these horrible treatments, and many children were paralyzed, and you'd have to be in bed for months. I mean, it was a pretty traumatic disease for anyone to suffer through. So it just made sense for David to have that in his backstory and for it to be something that he'd never be able to let go of.
Yeah, and like I said, his portrayal of the character, his nervous tics, and things like that. I have my roommate is a vet tech, and I've seen animals that have gone through that and things, and it's terrifying. But and his physical mannerisms, in a way, kind of bring those tics to the surface, and it definitely makes you wonder. So again, like I said, the character interaction is an absolutely amazing thing. But I want to ask you next, what was the decision to use Hodgman County, Kansas, as your filming location?
Oh man, yeah, we had originally planned to shoot in New Mexico really early on, because that's where we had come from and that's where our film connections were. But I don't know. I think I was messing around online one day and just happened to look at a Google map and I ended up in Hanston and started looking around the town a little bit and realized, I'd been there a lot as a kid, but looking at the Google map and thinking about the places I knew there, I kind of thought that maybe that was a possibility. My worry was that there weren't enough trees in the area because the story is set in the woods.
Sure.
But there was enough going on in my head with that I took a flight back and did some scouting over a weekend and realized that we could shoot the whole thing there because there are lots of little wooded areas. And then we hooked up with Lance Vish, who's actually my cousin, but he was our producer and production designer on the movie, and he lived there, and he ended up being the guy that really brought this all together for us as far as the physical production aspects, because he was there on the grounds while we were here in California, doing our pre-production, and there's just so much available there that we couldn't have gotten anywhere else, or if we did, we would have had to pay out the nose for it, whereas there pretty much everything was in kind, just because people were donating things and helping us out, and it was just amazing. So we had an amazing experience in Hodgman County.
Well, and I wanted to ask you in particular, kind of tell us about the process that went into making Leroy's Service Station and Clifton's General Store in the film.
Oh, man, I wish Lance was here to talk about this. Actually, he's in Arizona right now on a project shooting a Western, actually. Maybe if he's listening, he can call in and talk about it.
Well, again, what I wanted to remark on that was, if it'll help any, is again the amazing, just the absolutely stunning detail down to, and we'll get to this in a minute, down to the product placements and getting the correct labels and, or close approximation of labels from that time period. But again, I'll reference again the Rabid Love behind the scenes of the motion picture book. I'm looking at some of the pictures from where, the outside of the buildings, what they look like and what they look like afterwards. Were you and Hayley there, and were you surprised by just how historically amazingly accurate the recreations were?
Oh, yeah, totally. And, again, the production design, it's all Lance. He was there for a couple of months before we started production, and, he put all that stuff together. He was the Clifton's General Store and the gas station across the street, those were both basically vacant buildings that people owned in town and just being used to store a bunch of junk. So he went into both of those with the assistance of some people that he found and the owners and just cleaned those places up. And all of those labels, he generated brand new ones. He's a graphic designer. So he found examples of the old ones, like going through people's basements and stuff. And a lot of the stuff on the shelves are actually real products that he found. But then stuff that he couldn't find, he either created like an original label and made that product or recreated what the original ones looked like. He's an awesome graphic designer, awesome production designer, and that was just hard work on his part.
Yeah, I think originally when we were writing, we didn't realize how much we'd be able to show. Like, we chose the cabin location because it didn't really need a lot to change it. It was pretty much period correct. We only had to take out a few things like a modern TV and stuff like that. It was already an amazing location. But for like the general store and the gas station, we were just kind of like, oh, well, the town looks old, and if we cheat it the right way, we'll be able to get away with it. But then once Lance came in, he was just like, no, we can do it. We can make it 100% correct, and we can have every detail done. And then he actually followed through and did it. It was amazing, more than we could have hoped for.
Well, like I said, and you get that impression from watching the film that it's, just so spot on. I mean, like the perfect example I'll use is when you guys first go into that little convenience store, the gas station and all that. It reminded me straight out of when the girl walks into, the little store in the first Friday the 13th. It just had that authentic look. Now, you had talked about product placement and stuff. One of the stories that I found very interesting was the Hanstown beer story that's in the magazine.
Oh yeah.
And I found it funny. A lot of times hometown brews or local brews and things like that, they want their stuff promoted, but you guys kind of talk about how you had a hard time getting permission to get something shown on camera. So would you like to tell everyone a little bit about how Hanstown beer came to be?
Yeah, totally. So we didn't really have a whole lot of lead time on getting product placement. We had looked into getting like some real beer companies to try and place some products into the movie. But bigger companies, they need months and months of lead time to run it up the chain and all that stuff. So we're like, screw it, we'll make our own. So Hanstown beer, Hanstown is the original name of Hanston, Kansas, which is the town that we shot in. And I'm not really up on all the history, but it is in the book, I think. That was all Lance's idea. Once we decided that we'll come up with our own, he just started sending over little ideas here and there, some graphic design stuff, like for possible labels and whatever, and ended up with that. So, we just...
Yeah, then we just printed the labels and added them to beer bottles, and we had to paint the caps to make them that orange, and it was awesome. We had our own beer. We still have it. We have some bottles that are autographed by the cast, and
nice.
We still have some T-shirts and things. Very cool to have.
Yeah, totally.
We have our own beer company.
Yeah, and it will eventually be a real beer. We haven't quite had the resources to put that together yet or make it a reality, but we have been looking into getting that actually bottled and being able to sell it as a real beer brand. But it also appears in some other movies already. Rabid Love was the first, but there's some other projects that Lance has worked on since, where if you have a keen eye, you can catch some Hanstown advertising. There's actually a Lifetime movie on a few months ago called Escape from Polygamy, and if you watch the gas station scene from that one, there are some nice big Hanstown banners in the windows.
No kidding. That's pretty cool, though. Now,
yeah,
let me ask you all this.
Filmmakers watching are about to make a movie and they need a beer to put in their movie. They can contact us. We might be able to hook that up.
See, that's great networking right there. I agree with that. Now, let me ask you this: when you had everything in mind and you had kind of talked about, having to get the product labels to match and things like that, what did you find to be, for both of you, and I don't mean not only as a producer or a writer or a director, but as an actor as well, what did you guys both find to be the hardest element of recreating that time period?
For me, I think my acting has always been in the 80s. The performances that have inspired me the most were from the 80s, and so it was just fun to get to play a character who didn't have all the stress and hustle and bustle of the 21st century. I loved it, and I'd love to do it again. So we're thinking about doing another period piece. I love it, and especially just the clothes and the hair and I love it.
Yeah, we're absolutely doing another period piece, and that was all the fun stuff. I think the hardest part of it was just keeping in the mindset of, we wanted to make the movie, we wanted to make it look like it was actually made in the 80s. So, there are a lot of modern techniques that a lot of people want to use. You want to use a lot of dollies and moving shots and all these smooth, fancy filmmaking techniques, and you want to use, like, the latest digital camera and all this stuff. And we had to actually go against all that. And in the writing, too, the dialogue, we had to be very conscious of not referencing anything that would have tipped off, like, oh, these guys are in present day. They know things, not saying, like, future predictions or anything like that, but just, the way people talk. It was different in the 80s. There were different phrases. I think the best example of that is the line that we ripped off from Evil Dead 2 that Josh's character says early on. He says to his girlfriend, like, very lovingly, "I'm going to break your face."
Right.
Which is hilarious. In Evil Dead 2, it's just, like, off the cuff, and, nobody blinks at that comment. So it was, like, just totally a normal thing. So we wanted to throw stuff like that in there, and, because things were different back then,
Certainly.
But, yeah, just trying to keep in that mindset of, it's an 80s movie. It's not a modern movie.
Well, and you led right up to my next question. Of course, I was lucky with one film I worked on. I got to shoot on, we got to shoot on 35 millimeter film, and it's quite an interesting experience to actually shoot in that style because it gives the film a visual appearance that you usually don't get with a digital camera. Now, you guys filmed on, what was it, Canon X7s, is that correct?
Canon 7Ds, actually.
Okay. I wasn't sure exactly which kind it was, but, yeah, I knew it was a Canon. But one of the things that I keep mentioning over and over is when you sit down and you watch the film, you feel like you're watching a piece of film from the 80s. From a technical aspect, can you kind of describe, how you guys went about doing that so successfully where so many films try to replicate that process, but you still feel like you're watching digital? What did you guys do differently that you feel nailed the authenticity of it?
Yeah, well, ideally, we would have shot on 16 millimeter film to get it perfectly because, House of the Devil, which isn't an 80s movie but is set in the 80s and makes it look like an 80s movie, that's the the example that I was trying to follow because they did shoot that on 16 millimeter and that had the exact look that I was trying to get. And, we got pretty close with the DSLRs. It's not going to be perfect, but that's one of the things that I focused on really early was to dial in a look for that camera and a process that would, end up looking as close to film as possible. So, we got some color settings and I kind of finessed all the camera settings until I was happy with it. And we also used some filters on the lenses, Tiffin Black Pro Mist, which give it kind of a little film look, gives a little like a vignette and kind of a weird little thing. And then we shot on Zeiss prime lenses, which, added to it a little bit. And then, of course, the letterboxing that we did, we made it like super widescreen by cutting off the top and the bottom. That's my favorite part.
Well, yeah, also the lighting, too. That was one thing, like, from 80s film, when you're shooting out, when you see a scene that's out in the dark in the woods, for some reason there's always, like, a bright light in the distance, and you can tell it's a crew light. They put it there. And that was one of the things that we did in Rabid Love, too, and we put a lot of fog in, definitely, tons of fog.
I wish we could add more. The fog machine is kind of a pain in the ass to, keep up during production.
But it makes it so worth it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you can use the fog machine and nail it in one take, you're awesome. But you're right. Fog machines can drive you batty on set.
Yeah.
Now,
well, and the best thing, it adds a really subtle atmosphere.
Right. Oh, yes,
Sorry.
Definitely. But the next thing I wanted to ask you guys about was the first public screening of Rabid Love was on Saturday, March 16th, 2013, at the Depot Theater Company in Dodge City, Kansas.
Oh, wow. Yep.
What did it feel like for you guys that not, as you had mentioned, your first feature film as a director? What was that emotion like walking in and seeing your guys' film on the big screen in front of an audience? What was that like for both of you?
For me, it was exhausting. I don't even remember it. It was our first public screening, and to put the pressure on, it was in front of the crowd, the community that had hosted us during the production, which isn't, a typical movie crowd. It's not an LA crowd. It's a Kansas crowd of people that, are used to seeing movies in theaters that are, multi-million-dollar budgets and, the latest big thing. And then, people that we were so worried about offending because they had opened up their community to us to let us come and shoot our movie. But on top of all that, we took the train to Dodge City from LA, which was, I believe, a 32-hour ride.
Wow.
And
that was the second screening, right? The Dodge City one?
No. Oh, yeah, the Dodge City. Well, the Depot Theater's in Dodge City.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we actually had two that weekend. We didn't make it to the second one because we had to get back on the train and come to LA. But, yeah, the very first one was at the Depot Theater, and they'd actually given us a bunch of props and wardrobe for the movie. So we put up a big display of, like, all that stuff, and we had, the red carpet and all that stuff. But, yeah, on the train ride there, I was still exporting the movie and, like, making some final little tweaks so that it would be somewhat presentable, because at that point we were nowhere near having it ready for delivery to distributors or anything. So we took our iMac on the train, and it was sitting there in the seats with us, and I was trying to export this movie. So it was kind of a nightmare. We were exhausted when we got there, and I really don't even remember that first night.
How about for you? How about for you, Hayley?
Yeah, I remember it. It was a big deal. So yeah, we had two screenings. One was at the Depot Theater, and the next was at the movie theater in town. The Depot Theater. Yeah, the Depot Theater is actually a live theater, and it's not a movie kind of crowd. And they hosted a dinner for us, and it was really nice. So we had like the very kind of higher end of the community there. These are people who sponsor the arts, and they want to see the arts thrive in Dodge City. So, and here we're going to show them this slasher horror film, and it was just terrifying that we just thought everyone was going to hate it, or we're going to offend the crowd that's hosting us, but at the end of the night, and I'd say the average age at that screening was probably 55, 60. Like, it was an older crowd. But for the most part, we really got some amazing reactions from people. Everyone was happy with it, that it wasn't too gory, it wasn't too sexual, and I think 90% of the crowd was happy that we had come and used their town to make our film. And there were I remember a couple older people who were kind of, I don't know about that. I don't think I like that kind of thing when they were leaving. But a lot of people really loved it, and they felt like, oh, it reminded me of the movies that I was watching in the 80s, and they had a really good time and just really enjoyed it. So overall, it was a success. But yeah, it was nerves all night of, are they going to hate us? Are they going to chase us out of town with pitchforks and torches, kind of thing?
Now, how would you guys say that rated afterwards? Of course, you had your third premiere, your third public screening was at the Arena Stage at Theater of Arts in Los Angeles on April 19th of 2013. So, I mean, how did that premiere go for you guys? And then after that, it's anytime you screened it subsequently, what has been audience reaction?
We always get a pretty good reaction from what I can tell. Of course, nobody's going to come up to the filmmaker and says your movie sucks or I hate it or anything like that. So, what can you expect? But that one was really cool. It was our LA premiere, so we felt all fancy having a red carpet at the arena in Hollywood. And yeah, it was a great facility. We got pretty much the whole cast and crew there for the most part, and it was really fun to have everybody there for that. And then afterwards, we had one of our soundtrack artists, the Harmless Doves. They played a little concert at the Pig and Whistle right up the block. So that was really awesome. And yeah, I mean, for me, every time it's exhausting because I'm running around like crazy trying to organize the event, and I never really have time to relax, so they're always just blurs for me.
Yeah, it's what I imagine a wedding is like. We had a small wedding, but from what I hear, like when you have a wedding, the couple getting married are the two that cannot enjoy the evening because they're so busy in planning and they have no time to actually talk to everybody. And that's kind of how it is when you're hosting a premiere. It's like you're planning it, you're stressing about who's going to be there. I mean, we have like a really professional red carpet and press and all of this stuff, and making sure that, the press know who to question, and we had such a huge cast, and luckily so many of our cast were able to make it, and it was so much stress leading up to it. And then, of course, that's the audience of our peers, which is they're the most important people to please, because our fellow filmmakers. And yeah, so there were still some problems that the movie wasn't 100%. We had, the sound was off when we screened it in LA. I remember that. The sound was off, and so,
that's the worst, yeah.
Yeah, we wished we could have done it again or had more time, I guess. It's just, but eventually you have to let it go and let it happen, and it was a great party. I got to say that. It was a great party and a great end to the night.
Now, one of the things that I found really cool, both by pictures that you had sent me in the past, and again, looking through the book, is some of the amazing poster art that you guys had thought about using. Of course, I love the Rabid Love one with the teeth that just says "Catch the Virus." The other one I really liked was the one that's very reminiscent to the Rocky Horror Picture Show with the foaming lips that just says Rabid Love.
That was my favorite.
Foam is where the heart is. That is fantastic. And then you have the finished. You have the finished art, which is the drawn art. And Paul, you actually drew that poster art. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was my first time doing any digital art. I actually used Photoshop to make that, and it's just a compilation of still photos that we had that I drew and painted over to kind of make that. I was going for a Drew Struzan kind of thing, but I'm obviously not that good, but I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out.
Well, again, the drawn artwork aspect of it, you're sitting here and you look at it, and, you very much get that 80s movie poster feel from it. So, again, from an overall standpoint, everything that you could nail from the 80s you did, down from continuity to acting to clothing, just everything that went into it. So, I want to say kudos to both of you straight out because, you nailed it. Your attention to detail is something that I think a lot of filmmakers these days don't pay attention to. And never once was I distracted from the film saying, oh, that wristwatch didn't exist then. Why is there, why is there a digital TV? Why is there a cell phone? You guys, at least in my opinion, I never caught any continuity issues. And again, that's a big up to you and your crew. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, we love the 80s and we love 80s movies, and we didn't want ours to be campy or making fun of 80s movies or the 80s at all, because we really love that. We both grew up in the 80s, and that was our childhood. So it's an homage. It's really saying this stuff is awesome. We love it. We want to present it the way we remember it.
Now to ask you both this, and I wanted to save it till after the film so everyone could hear, your both of yours obvious passion for what you do. Will there be a sequel? We haven't given away the ending. We didn't tell anyone what the ending was, but is there the possibility of a sequel?
Oh, heck yeah. Actually, yeah, it's been brought up many times, and not by us, but it's something that we've thought about pretty early on. We left the ending open so that there could be some potential storylines for a sequel. And I'm actually heading back to Kansas next week for 6 days to start some very early development and scouting of what will hopefully be our next project, which we haven't settled on yet, but one of the possibilities is a Rabid Love sequel.
Very nice. Now, to go hand in hand with that, since, you had mentioned first feature film as a director. Why horror?
Seemed like fun. A lot of reasons. I never would have said that my favorite movies are horror before I made a horror movie. But now, obviously, we're horror people. But, horror movies, and we've come to find this out, that the independent horror community is just amazing, and there's no other genre of movies that has its own, world like the horror movies do. There are thousands and thousands of websites and just fan sites and all kinds of stuff, but you don't get that. Maybe a little bit in sci-fi. But those hard genres. So we wanted to make something that people would want to see. Hello.
Sorry.
It's okay.
All right.
Okay. Sorry.
So we wanted to make something that people would want to see. A lot of indie filmmakers tend to go with like these dramas or, an indie road movie about life and growing up and all this stuff. But we want our movies to be fun. And horror is fun, at least the horror that we like. Lots of reasons. Just mainly because horror is awesome.
Now, I wanted to ask you, Hayley, you had mentioned it before. There is not a lot. There's blood and gore in the film, but it's not overly gratuitous, nor is there any gratuitous sex or nudity in the film.
Don't tell the horror community that.
What's that?
I said don't tell the horror community that. That's the one complaint that we've gotten from, all the horror fans. that it's,
that was
not
one of the
enough
things
nudity,
that I wanted
not
to...
enough gore.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying... What I mean by that is you're not just throwing buckets of blood just to throw buckets of blood. The gore in the film is...
some buckets of blood.
The gore in it is certainly gory. There are some very nasty aspects to the film. But, the question I wanted to ask was, and there are plenty of good 80s horror films that did not go into gratuitous nudity. Was that always a conscious decision going into the film, was not to go completely exploitive or gratuitous in that aspect?
I wanted more nudity. I like nudity. I definitely wanted more of it. But I don't know. I think it came down to who we were working with, where we were working, that it just didn't seem right to take the film in that direction. I don't know. Maybe you can answer better, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to have some form of nudity and definitely some gore. Nothing over the top, though.
Right.
I mean, think of Friday the 13th or The Burning, which actually The Burning showed quite a bit of nudity. That's a bad example.
Yeah. But no, the original Friday the 13th is a good example of that. You had flashes, but I mean, it was not so much in your face that it detracted from the movie. And I feel Rabid Love falls in that same line.
Yeah, a lot of the inspiration was that the pacing and what you saw in Friday the 13th is you saw very little. And it was a very slowly paced film. And I think that's a lot of what we kind of had in mind when we were making Rabid Love.
Yeah, so...
Now, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the gore and the nudity, of course, to satisfy the horror community, we would have liked to have had a bit more of each. The gore, it basically boiled down to we didn't really have the time to dedicate to our special effects. We would have liked to have gotten a bit more detailed and elaborate with some of the gore stuff, but without going too over the top. And then, the nudity, it was thrown around. We wanted to do a bit more, but then we loved our cast so much, and they're all innocent little girls. We didn't want to put them through that.
Well, like I said, I think the way that you guys did it, tonally it fits well in the 80s. Not everything has to be, naked boobies flopping around for 50 minutes. That doesn't make a good horror film. And I think you guys hit the perfect balance in that. But we've got a few more minutes left, so I have a few more things I wanted to hit on real quick. One of the things that I found really amazing about the film, and again, it hits the 80s tone. Tell us a little bit about how you selected the songs for the soundtrack, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and on Amazon MP3.
Yes, it is. That was a pretty long process, really. But, I started out, actually, there were some songs that I had in mind when we were writing the script that I wanted to try and license. One by Jim Steinman called Surf's Up was originally going to be over the that night sequence where John leaves the cabin. And I had actually edited to that song starting off. And I think we played that song on set during some of the shots.
Yeah, not just edited. You wrote to that song. You had that song in mind. Yeah.
So there was a big, 80s playlist that I had put together for inspiration for the writing and the editing and everything. And there were a few songs that I edited to before we had any license. But then we put the call out, I think, we put it out through friends and film people that we knew. We're looking for 80s style music, and I gave a list of artists that I wanted to try and emulate, like, Jim Steinman, Bonnie Tyler, Meatloaf, REO Speedwagon, stuff like that. And we ended up getting a lot of responses, and then, through friends of friends and Twitter friends and all kinds of people online, we started to get this big library of options. So I started sorting through all that stuff, and we ended up finding people like Gene the Werewolf and Ruby Fate, and then our friends, the Harmless Doves, who played at our LA premiere, led by George Hartline, who is actually a former U.S. Marine as well. Yes, so we contacted them, and, you know, they were nice enough to let us license their music to use in the movie for free, and I put the soundtrack album together, and it's available digitally right now. We want to do physical CDs and vinyl, but it's really expensive. So we're
amazing.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, it's really expensive to do that. So we're waiting for some money to come in, and maybe we'll do that someday.
I hear that, and that'll kind of lead into the next question. Of course, Rabid Love is available on DVD. According to the website, it looks like it's also available on Brain Damaged Films, Amazon.com, and on Netflix. You know, two of the things that are very similar, again, I'll bring up Matt Farnsworth and Diane Foster, who did The Orphan Killer, and Tyler Mane and Renee Geerlings, who did Compound Fracture. You know, they both pretty much have gone the self-distribution route. I've been hearing rumors that Compound Fracture may have a deal, but Matt Farnsworth completely self-distributed The Orphan Killer through downloads and things like that. Do you guys feel as filmmakers, especially since you pretty much run Rogue Taurus Films, am I correct?
Yeah, Rogue Taurus is just us. It's Hayley and I, and then, you know, a gathering of friends that we have. I pretty much include Lance and our friend Mark Farini in that grouping all the time. But yeah, it's us. There's really no physical company or anything. It's just the name we use.
So are you guys, do you see self-distribution as more of the way to go these days? Or, you know, are there higher hopes of a studio maybe still picking the film up for a wider distribution?
Well, we got distribution through Court International, Midnight Releasing, and I can't say enough good things about them, but self-distribution, we had toyed around with that idea early on, and it would have been like a last resort had no distributors wanted us. Luckily, that didn't happen, but, man, I can't imagine trying to self-distribute and, like, doing the work to get it out there.
After we spent so many months editing ourselves, it was, you know, just by the time we had a final cut of the film, just the thought of then going further and distributing on our own would have been so exhausting. I'm so glad that we didn't. Kudos to anybody who can do it, because, oh my gosh, I don't think I could have spent another minute on Rabid Love than I did.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, it might be a good idea depending on what route you go for some indie filmmakers. I mean, if it's somebody that already has a name and a really big audience that will, you know, buy a bunch of stuff from them directly, I'm sure that would be a good route for them. But, you know, for somebody just starting out, I highly recommend finding a distributor that will get behind your movie and get it out there, because our guys at Midnight Releasing, you know, we turn it over to them, and they already have networks in place. You know, they get it out to every cable VOD provider, and they put it on Amazon and Netflix, and they sell it on their own website, and they get it to iTunes, Vudu, Xbox, Google Play, every place. Sure. And you don't have to do anything except give them a percentage of the money, which is totally cool with me because they're doing so much work. And, you know, for me to put in that amount of work and get the movie to the places that they did, I mean, I would have died.
I feel you. Well, we're almost out of time, so let me ask you this. What do you both feel sets Rabid Love apart from everything else that we're seeing these days come out of Hollywood and indie circles?
Geez, well, we had no money to make the thing, so you see what we did with that. And then, you know, I think like we've been talking about, just the 80s aspect and being true to that type of movie.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like if you love horror films from the 70s and 80s, you watch them over and over and over again, you know, and eventually you run out of movies to watch. They're done. They can't be made anymore. But now here's Rabid Love. It's like this bonus movie that could have been made in the 70s and 80s, and it's like you get to fall in love with that genre and that time period all over again. I think it's really unique in that way.
Like I said, I certainly agree. Well, I would be remiss in not telling the audience, please make sure to come over to Horror Society. I did an interview with Hayley and Paul several months back. That's up on the site. I also interviewed Jessica about the film. The DVD review of Rabid Love will be up on Horror Society by the end of the weekend.
Awesome.
Before we go, is there anything you guys would like to say to your fans? And, do you want to throw out website addresses if people want to follow you on social media, anything like that?
Absolutely. And let me say thank you to Horror Society, because you guys have been supporting us from pretty much the beginning. On our latest news page, we have all the links of all the reviews and interviews and pieces that have been put online with us, and you guys are on there all over the place. Thanks for that.
We love what you guys did, and we appreciate the fact that you take time out of your schedule to talk to us and the fans and let us know what's going on. I mean, we appreciated that from our end, and I would be remiss in saying too, make sure to check out issue number 2 of Living Dead magazine. I do have Hayley listed as one of the top 5 new faces to watch in our genre, so make sure to head over and check that out as well. But I mean,
I can't thank you enough for that article.
It's
that
no
made
problem.
Me so happy. It still makes me happy. I finally got my copy of the magazine in the mail, and I love it. It's so awesome. I would love to be thought of as an actual scream queen someday, and I hope that happens.
Well, I mean, I think you're both well on your way in your careers. I mean, Paul's more of an actor than he thinks, since he's been in 2 of the Marvel movies, but he don't want to talk about that
right.
too much. Well, I mean, do you guys before you go, do you want to give out social media where people can follow you if they want to message you, Rogue Taurus Films, any of that stuff?
Yeah, totally. Our official site is rabidlovemovie.com, and we're also on Facebook, facebook.com/rabidlovemovie, and our Twitter is @rabidlove, and we also have the Rogue Taurus website, roguetaurus.com, and I'm actually in the process of updating that. And then Hayley's stuff is...
you can follow me on Twitter @HellSpells. It's HAYLVBELLZ, and I love connecting with people on Twitter, so do that. Facebook.com/Hayley Derryberry too.
Yeah, and let me plug our other actors also on Twitter. It's @Jeff Sonnenborn, @Brandon Stacy, @Josh_Hammond, and @HannaMayMuse. And then you can find them on their Facebook pages. If you go to the Rabid Love site on our cast page, the About, and then the cast page, we have links to all of our actors' social media, IMDb, everything. So go there and follow them, tweet them, all that good stuff.
Very nice. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I want to thank you for putting out such a great film. If the Rabid Love sequel ever happens, I would love to come out on set and do an on-set interview and picture shoot with you guys one day. So
that'd be cool.
Keep me posted.
Yeah, totally.
You're always welcome at Horror Society, and if you have any news you need to be put out, please let me know, guys.
We absolutely will. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being on. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much to our guests this evening, Paul J. Porter and Hayley Derryberry, coming on to talk about their film, Rabid Love. You can go over to the Rabid Love site and pick it up. You can check out Midnight Releasings, Netflix, but definitely filmmakers to be watching, actors and actresses to be watching. Well-told, well-written story, definitely worth it. Watch for the written review of Rabid Love to be up on the website soon. One of the questions I forgot to ask them is, will the movie be available on Blu-ray? And I will find that information out for everybody. Coming up, we're going to have our Scream Factory Blu-ray DVD review of The Beast of Hollow Mountain. But next, we're going to go into our next Metal Blade Spotlight. The band in the second spotlight this evening is Amon Amarth. The name of the CD is Deceiver of the Gods. The name of the song is Under Siege. and welcome back to the Calling Hours on Horror Society Radio. Once again, this is your host, the Dead Man, Michael Jones. That was our Metal Blade spotlight. The name of the band was Amon Amarth off of the CD, Deceiver of the Gods. The title track was Under Siege. For them, and of course, Aeon, who we played earlier, and our band to close out the show, which is a mystery till the end of the show, you can always head on over to www.metalblade.com. You can always head to Amazon. You can always head to iTunes, or you can head to your local favorite retailer and pick up any of the music that you have heard this evening. Thanks to our good friend Kelly out at Metal Blade for making all of that possible. Coming up, in fact, right now, I believe it's time for some more digital dismemberment.
Digital dismemberment.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the second part of our digital dismemberment feature. This evening we are going to be covering Scream Factory's The Beast of Hollow Mountain, which is part of a 2-disc Blu-ray and DVD combo pack with the Neanderthal Man. This past January, loyal fans were invited to combat the winter chills with a double dose of 50s high camp creature features when Edward Nasor and Ishmael Rodriguez's The Beast of Hollow Mountain, which starred Guy Madison, who was in Blood of the Executioner, and Patricia Medina, who was in Snow White and the Three Stooges, combined with E.A. DuPont's The Neanderthal Man, which starred Robert Shea. He was in How to Make a Monster. Richard Crane in The Devil's Partner. Doris Merrick, Untamed Women. Joyce Terry, who's in The Beatniks, and Beverly Garland from It Conquered the World and The Alligator People, arrived on home entertainment shelves in a double-featured 2-disc Blu-ray and DVD combo pack January 28th of this year. The movie that we're going to be covering is The Beast of Hollow Mountain. I'll give you a little bit of background info on the movie. The Beast of Hollow Mountain was based on an idea of the legendary special effects wizard Willis O'Brien, who did King Kong, Son of Kong, and The Lost World. The Beast of Hollow Mountain is a classic creature feature. An American rancher living in Mexico is staying near Hollow Mountain, an impenetrable swamp where, stories have it, dwells a living prehistoric Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is usually, we don't get the opportunity to review older films like this, and a lot of the modern-day fan may initially be put off by this film. And it's not that it's a bad film. 1958, think along the lines of Ray Harryhausen. Think of King Kong in terms of the style of effects. You have an American rancher who's living in Mexico who has bought a cattle ranch with another gentleman down there. And, they're having their problems with some of the local townsfolk, in particular one gentleman. The American winds up becoming, quote-unquote, friends with this guy's fiancée. There's a big fight over that. So the first 45 minutes of the film, you have no idea that there's a Tyrannosaurus or whatever the dinosaur may be roaming around in the area. And it's very much, when you're watching it, it's a Western with a mystery flair to it. People are disappearing. Cattle have disappeared, and a lot of it is left up to supposition as, ghosts or monsters or whatever, but the town folks play it off as superstition. Well, as things become more and more involved, the American rancher finally decides to leave to quell the anxieties between he and the other gentleman who wants to buy out his ranch and have him basically leave his fiancée alone. Well, at about the 50-minute mark, we finally see the dinosaur who eats one of the helpers of the American rancher, and the guy's son wants to go out and find his dad who has disappeared in the swamp, and that's when we see the dinosaur, and the dinosaur starts marauding on the people in the town. Now, where the disappointing aspect would be for a lot of the modern audiences is you have to realize this is not Jurassic Park that you're watching. You have to remember we're talking about a film made in the late 50s, right before the start of the 60s. It's more of that claymation style of dinosaur. And in a lot of ways, it was humorous to see the beast on the screen. There was a lot of tongue licking. There's a lot of shakiness to the frames where the dinosaur is involved. But again, allowances have to be made for the time period and remembering what it is that you're watching. Overall, I thought the locations in the film were amazing. I thought the acting, for the most part, was fairly good. Again, depending on your views on special effects, this is one of those movies that you're either going to love or hate. I found it entertaining from the aspect of, based off of an idea by legendary special effects wizard Willis O'Brien. I mean, you're talking about a guy that worked on King Kong, Son of Kong, The Lost World. There's a lot of inherent history there that led to the evolution of people like Ray Harryhausen and the things that he did in his films. Is this the best example of that type of effects work? No. But is it an entertaining movie in its own right? It certainly is. One of the things that's certainly noticeable, and this is by no means any disrespect to anything that Scream Factory does, you can certainly tell that whatever materials they had to recreate this for Blu-ray certainly were not in the best of condition. I can't imagine there are too many original prints of the Beast of Hollow Mountain running around. There are times when you watch the film that you will see grain, you will see some black line and some spotting, but there are other times when you're watching the film that it's almost a crystal clear in terms of its appearance, in terms of its sound and things along those lines. Not a particularly bloody film. You see snapshots of people basically being picked up by the dinosaur chasing. The American is certainly a nut swinging on a rope line trying to induce the dinosaur to fall into the swamp and die. And, of course, at the end of the movie, we have the happy ending where the dinosaur dies and the townsfolk feels like they're safe. The one thing about this, and again, with it being a much older film, I'm sure there was not any behind-the-scenes footage that they could have incorporated with this. It might have been nice to see a little bit more about the effects or still galleries. But again, thinking about the time that this film was made, the fact that we even have a copy of this on Blu-ray for actual watching, in and of itself is an amazing piece of work. So if you are a fan of the old-style creature feature films, if you like your dinosaurs made of Play-Doh running around trying to eat ranchers and cattle, this movie is certainly for you. And again, as a guilty pleasure, I have to admit that I enjoyed the film for what it was. Looking back on the time period and the things that followed, it certainly falls in that line. As far as a rating for the film goes, it's not an all-time genre classic, but I would give it about a 6.5 or a 7. It's not a terrible film. The lack of special features I can only hold against Scream Factory so far. Once again, like I said, it's with the film being as old as it is and being able to either find photos or any behind-the-scenes footage was probably near impossible. But an A for effort does go into getting this film out. Next week, we will cover the Neanderthal Man, so at that point, I will have a rating for the overall disc as well. So, before we end our evening, I would like to say thank you so much to all of my guests and everyone that came on this evening. In our Indie Spotlight, I want to say thank you again to Erin Darley. She did an absolutely fantastic job telling us about Killer Pizza, the film that she's going to be working on starring Ron Jeremy. I would also like to say thank you once again to Paul J. Porter and Hayley Derryberry for coming on and getting into such an extensive interview about their film Rabid Love. If you have not seen the film, please make sure to go and check it out. You can head on over to Rogue Taurus Films. You can head over to Midnight Releasing. On Facebook. It's available on Netflix. I believe you can also download it on iTunes. So go check this movie out. If you don't, you're missing out on a great look back onto the 80s genre. So if you're a fan of 80 horror films, go check that out. We also want to say thank you to Paul and Hayley for sending out a copy, and thank you to Midnight Releasing for sending it to us for a review, which will be up on HorrorSociety.com after the weekend. I also want to say thank you to Tom Chen and the fantastic people out at Scream Factory for sending us along the 2-disc Blu-ray and DVD combo pack of The Beast of Hollow Mountain and The Neanderthal Man. The Neanderthal Man will be reviewed next week, as we reviewed The Beast of Hollow Mountain this evening. Also want to say thank you to our friends out at Metal Blade Records, and thank you so much to Kelly for sending all of the promos that we get to listen to every week. This week we have heard Aeon off of their CD, Aeon's Black. Nothing Left to Destroy was their song. We heard from Amon Amarth off of Deceiver of the Gods. The name of the song was Under Siege. And as we close out the show this evening, we are going to close it out with Hail of Bullets off of the album 3, The Rommel Chronicles. The name of the song is Swoop of the Falcon. And until next week, ladies and gentlemen, remember to rest in peace.